It's the summertime, which means, yes, you guessed it, we're talking about one of the bigger movies of the year, Along for the Ride on Netflix. No one else has heard of this? Okay, well, you know what? We'll get into it. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're diving into Netflix's teen romance film Along for the Ride, which actually releases on May 6th. So it's going to be streaming for everyone to watch, and I'm going to imagine it definitely has an audience, but I have some thoughts about the film overall. It's directed and written by Sofia Alvarez, who actually wrote To All the Boys I've Loved Before, movies that I actually really enjoy, and it stars Emma Pasarow and Belmont Cameli. Now, the film itself is based on a novel by Sarah Dessen, but if you don't know too much about the film, let's talk about it. The summer before college, Auden meets the mysterious Eli, a fellow insomniac. While the seaside town of Colby sleeps, both of them embark on a nightly quest to help Auden experience the fun and carefree teen life she never knew she wanted. Now I'm gonna stop y'all right there. I am a sucker for coming of age type films, and I am okay with these teen movies. Like I said, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, those movies are fun, and that description alone kind of sold me on this movie. But of course, I do have some positives and some negatives, but before we get into it, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I absolutely love talking about movies just like this. So if you do too, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on the bell, and hit the thumbs up button again if you are a fan of these sort of teen romance movies. They're very sappy. And hey, when you see the film, let me know down below in the comments what you think. So you know what, guys, let's waste no more time and get right into the positives and what I thought actually worked okay with this film. And it begins with the music. The music here is curated by Beach House. So there's a soundtrack here. Of course, they pick and choose songs from different bands, but there's this synth pop kind of score that is composed by Beach House. And I actually, one, like Beach House, and two, I think it fits this movie very well. And the music here is the strongest area of the film. And honestly, I figured it would, especially with this literally being by the sea. So it just has this teen vibe feel to it that just works. And for some, this might be a positive and others might be a negative, but this feels like a young adult novel stripped page for page with all the dialogue and the acting and thrown on the screen. Fans of the novel it's based on and these types of Netflix movies will probably resonate with it more than I did. Even though, again, I am a fan of some of these teen rom-com or romance films, some of them do strike out, but I will tell you that if you enjoy that sort of flow, the predictability to the movie, of course, I think you're going to at least enjoy most of this film. And hey, I'm not ashamed to admit it, the first 15 minutes of Along for the Ride were actually pretty promising. I was kind of shocked looking around thinking, I'm actually liking this film because I did expect it to be really generic. Now, after the 15 minutes pass, we'll talk about it in the negatives, but I will say this at least has a decent start. There's a solid foundation at first, and yes, all the dialogue definitely feels very Gen Z in a way, but I won't lie, I was actually kind of vibing with it. And then on a technical note, I do think that the cinematography was beautiful at times. Now, I don't know much about the work of cinematographer Luca Del Pupo, but I will say he did a decent job of framing some shots and actually capturing the beauty and the essence of this seaside town of Colby. It looked good, and at some moments where I was losing a ton of interest, at least what I was seeing was aesthetically and visually pleasing. So yeah, the cinematography, again, it's not awful. But you guys, that's where the positives end for me. For the rest of the film, I will tell you that this was striking out. There's not a lot to chew on here in this movie, and it's not very interesting. I mean, it's very formulaic. I even predicted when the argument between our two leads, those love interests, would happen, and that's not good. It kind of felt like it was going through the motions at one point as well. There are stretches of time in this movie where I simply didn't care much for what was happening on screen, and that's really due to the directing, acting, and the writing. And I hate to say it because I just don't like talking negatively about any area of a film, but I have to be honest, the acting here was pretty poor. Emma Pasarow plays Auden, our main character, and while I understand she's supposed to be awkward and looking to fit in as she works for her stepmom during the summer in this small town, she just didn't sell me on anything. If a scene called for her to be very emotional, it didn't resonate. She wasn't able to break through to another dimension of her acting, and hey, it could be that the writing, the script told her, act a little blah and, blasé in a sense, but no, I just think that unfortunately she just was pretty stiff throughout the film, and it really did take away from scenes because everyone else is sort of giving what needs to be given in the scene, and she's just there looking very dejected. I also felt that her love interest here, Eli, who was played by Belmont Cameli, was bland. He just really doesn't have a lot of range in his acting arsenal, and it's just another huge issue that I have where he looks completely out of it. It is just him doing the bare minimum, and unfortunately by the end it was just a chore to get through scenes with both of them together. Oh, and don't get me started on the fact that there was a lack of chemistry between both him and Auden in this movie, so it didn't help this film kind of go by any quicker. And when it comes to the rest of the cast, there are so many moments of overacting or just being kind of over the top, but not in a way that serves the story or the movie very well. There's this one character named Leah, I believe, one of the girls that runs the store, and I will be honest with you, I was just annoyed. It just seems like all of them were along for the ride, no pun intended. There's just not really a standout here. As a fan of Blackish, I will tell you Marcus Scribner was criminally underused. I mean, he had maybe 2 or 3 scenes and possibly lines in this movie, and he is so good at delivering comedy, so they could have used him and utilized his abilities much better in this film. Alrighty, so now let's move on to the direction and the writing, which I felt was very pedestrian, and it surprised me because, again, I'm a fan of To All the Boys I've Loved Before. But now that I think about it, maybe it was Lana Condor that made those movies, because here, I just feel like director and writer Sofia Alvarez couldn't find a groove. There were a lot of dry scenes here, and moments that should have been defining for the story, but everything just sort of fell flat. And when it comes to the writing, I'm gonna go back to it, guys. Everything is very generic here. The dialogue is wholly uninteresting, and this movie really does rely on conversations, but they go nowhere. It's simply boring dialogue to me, and it's just not interesting enough to sustain my interest for 1 hour and 46 minutes. I mean, heck, there's even an entire subplot here with Auden and her parents who are divorced that feels like it should have been more important than it was. It's remembered in some scenes and forgotten about, and by the end we're expected to believe that everything is all hunky-dory, but I don't know, it felt so out of place, and why introduce it if you're not going to really focus on it enough and give it the time and care it really deserves, because this was a cornerstone moment for Auden, and it just never worked out. So overall, you guys, Along for the Ride is a movie that unfortunately is a chore to get through. It has some promising elements. Like I said, the first 15 minutes lays down a foundation to where I was actually enjoying the movie for the most part. I know the acting is not all the way there, but technically speaking, the cinematography and the music was actually enough to keep my interest at first, but after a while, the movie really just falls completely flat. There are a lot of holes in the script, and the acting isn't very strong. So instead of getting a movie that sort of separates itself from the traditional teen romance films that we're used to on Netflix, it falls right into the same formula, and it makes for a very uninspiring attempt at trying to be different this summer. But hey, if the idea was to be one and the same, I mean, it at least accomplished that, but I can't recommend Along for the Ride unless you are really diehard fans of Emma Pasarow and Belmont Cameli. So yeah, I'll have to give this one maybe 2 seashells out of 5. I don't know why I said seashells, but you know, they're by the seashore, so I guess it works. I gotta stop with these puns. But guys, there you have it. That's my real review of Along for the Ride. Again, it debuts on Netflix May 6th, so when you find out whether or not you like the film, let me know down below in the comments. Let's talk about it. And hey, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on the bell, and hit that thumbs up button again if you like movie reviews just like this. I just put out my Doctor Strange content, of course, earlier this week, and next week, guys, well, let's just say we're going flying. It's a Top Gun Maverick thing. Didn't I say I would stop with these puns? Alright, let me sign off and get out of here. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.